They say coming home should feel warm. Like the smell of sage and roasted turkey, like a seat waiting for you at the table. But that's not what it felt like, not for me. My name is Riley. I came home last Thanksgiving. In uniform. Straight from deployment. And my mom. She poured wine for everyone except me. I was standing right there. But somehow I wasn't there at all. Charlotte, my brother's fiancée, gave me a soft smile. She held out her glass toward mine like she wanted to toast. "Welcome home," she whispered. Her voice had that gentle southern warmth. Not from around here clearly, but it was kind. I clinked her glass without much force. Said, "Thank you," barely above a breath. And sat down. Everything was set perfectly, the linen napkins with the little gold pumpkins. The jazz music floating under the sound of silverware. The chandelier dimmed just enough to feel expensive. It was the kind of dinner my mom liked to host. Perfect on the outside. Ethan, my older brother, raised his glass higher. He was wearing some new sport coat, navy with tiny checks. Mom had probably picked it. He cleared his throat, always a fan of the spotlight. "I just wanted to share some news," he said. A pause. Then with a big smile, "I got the regional director position." Cheers. Claps. Mom reached across the table to squeeze his hand. Dad gave him that firm, approving nod. Charlotte beamed like she knew this moment mattered. I smiled too. Not because I was excited, but because I was trained to. Mom turned to Ethan and said, "We knew it wouldn't be long. You've always been our star." Then she looked right past me and asked Charlotte what dessert she brought. I reached into my bag and pulled out the frame I'd wrapped in plain brown paper. Nothing fancy. Just a photo of my unit, the 6 of us covered in dust, arms over each other's shoulders. We'd lost one of ours the week before that photo was taken. But we still smiled. Because that's what you do. Even when it hurts. I passed the frame to my parents. My mom unwrapped it carefully as if expecting something fragile. She stared at it for 2 seconds. Then set it down. Face down. Right next to the butter dish. My dad didn't say a word. My mouth felt dry. The turkey smelled rich, but I couldn't taste anything. I looked at Charlotte. She was watching me. She mouthed something. I couldn't quite read her lips. Then Mom turned to the medals on my chest. They weren't many. 3 rows neat. A mix of commendations and service ribbons. Hard-earned. Quietly so. She smiled like she'd just seen a scrapbook. "Cute decorations," she said. "You always did love crafts." I nodded. Didn't flinch, didn't blink. Just kept chewing the sweet potatoes I couldn't taste. Ethan laughed. That light dismissive laugh he always used when I tried to speak. "You probably hand out Tylenol in tents," he said. There was silence. Just the clink of forks. Charlotte's eyes widened a little. Even she seemed unsure now. I set my fork down, met Ethan's eyes, and said, "I've held men's rib cages closed with my hands. That's all. No emotion. No drama. Just the truth." No one said anything. They just went back to the cranberry sauce. I wish I could say I stood up. That I made some grand speech or slammed the table. But I didn't. I just folded my napkin. Neat. Precise. Like we were taught. And then Charlotte, she reached across, refilled my wine glass. I looked at her. And for a second, just one, I thought I might cry. But I didn't. Because I don't cry at tables like that. I don't give them that version of me. I took a sip. Let it burn a little. And smiled. Because sometimes a stranger's kindness says more than a lifetime of family dinners ever could. The night I earned my Purple Heart, I texted my mom. Just 2 words. "I'm okay." She never replied. Not a heart emoji. Not a thumbs up. Nothing. It was late October 2021. The valley smelled like gunpowder and sweat. Dust clung to everything: our skin, our gear, the inside of our teeth. They said it would be a quick evac. In and out. A med supply run. But helicopters don't always follow plans. Especially when they're hit midair. We went down hard. Rotors still turning. One second I was bracing against turbulence, the next I was upside down, blood dripping from my ear, boots kicked off in the chaos. Sergeant Torres screamed, but not in fear. She was already moving, unbuckling, shouting over the hiss of the cracked console. Riley Reynolds is out cold. Major Reynolds, our pilot, slumped forward. Helmet cracked. Smoke thickening by the second. That's when the training took over. Not fear, not adrenaline. Just sequence. Check pulse. Secure airway. Treat. Move, somewhere between stabilizing Sergeant Bennett's chest wound and calling in partial coordinates. I realized I was bleeding. Bad. Upper thigh. Shrapnel maybe. You're hit, Torres yelled, ripping open her own vest to get gauze. I pressed it down myself. Didn't flinch. Didn't feel much of anything. Pain comes later. Sometimes, days later. But betrayal. That's instant. We held position for hours, then crawled inch by inch, dragging the wounded with us, avoiding open line of sight. Torres kept talking, half to herself, half to me. You good, Riley? Still breathing. How about now, still breathing? We said it like a prayer. By the second night, our radios were toast. I counted stars instead of hours. My body was ice. But I stayed awake. Someone had to. Someone always has to. When rescue finally came, we were just shadows. Dried blood, cracked lips, still holding onto each other like ropes in a flood. At the field hospital, they gave me morphine. I remember it stung, then floated. Then silence. I woke up to fluorescent lights and the hum of a vending machine. They'd cleaned the wound. Stitched me up, put my boots in a plastic bag at the foot of the cot. I reached for my phone. Battery almost gone. Signal just strong enough. I opened my texts. Still no reply. Still that message sitting alone. I'm okay. Out of habit, I checked Ethan's socials. That was my mistake. There he was. At a podium. Suit pressed, smile polished. New job announcement, 142 likes. And beneath it a comment from Mom. So proud of our son. Future partner at Landon and Marks. Not a word about her daughter, still bandaged, still bruised, still 5,000 miles from home. That night, I stopped checking my phone. Somewhere in the bed next to mine, someone whispered in their sleep. If I don't make it, tell my daughter I tried. I never asked who it was. Never got the chance. But I remember that line better than anything my mother's ever said. Because he meant it. Even in sleep, even in pain, he meant it. The chair marked Mitchell family stayed empty until minute 28. I saw it from the stage. Second row. Gold lettering. Perfect view of the podium. No one sat there. Just a folded program resting on velvet. We'd rehearsed the ceremony the day before. Where to stand. When to nod. How to receive the medal. They said someone from your family usually pins it. If they're present. I said nothing. April's sun came through the chandeliers like melted glass. Everything smelled faintly of polished wood and security detail cologne. The East Room was quieter than I expected, just rustling papers, camera clicks, and coughs someone tried to hold back. When they called my name, I rose like we'd practiced. Boots aligned, back straight, not too fast, not too slow. A rhythm I'd lived by for years. The citation was read out loud. I didn't look down. Under enemy fire. Stabilized, 15 wounded. Called in life-saving coordinates. Refused evacuation until all were accounted for. Pause. Applause. Not loud, but honest. A few of the other honorees nodded toward me. I nodded back. Then President Sterling stepped forward. Silver hair, kind eyes, not the kind of man you expect to look tired behind a smile. He shook the general's hand. Looked at me, and said, one of the men she saved was my brother. You could hear the room change. It wasn't just respect anymore, it was something heavier. Quieter. He pinned the medal on my lapel himself, then leaned in. His voice was low but clear. Thank you for my brother. You saved more than you'll ever know. I didn't answer, didn't cry, didn't smile. I just nodded. Like we'd rehearsed. As he stepped back, the press cameras fired in sequence. Left to right. Flash. 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 I looked out over the room, rows of suits and ribbons. And at the very back, movement. A figure slipping into the reserved seats. Then another, my father. Straightening his collar, scanning for a place to sit. Like he'd wandered into the wrong meeting. My mother followed close behind. Purse clutched so tightly her knuckles were white, hair perfect. Expression unreadable. They didn't look at me. Not once. I didn't expect them to. They stayed standing through the final two recipients. Never sat, never clapped. The applause kept going. Rising, falling. All of it like water over stone. And I stood there wearing that medal with a polished citation in my hand, thinking of that empty chair. The one they walked past to stand at the back. The same way they'd walked past every quiet win, every bleeding night, every "I'm okay" that went unanswered. So I glanced toward them. Not to search for approval, not anymore. Just to confirm something I'd always known. They didn't clap, they didn't cheer, but this time, I didn't need them to. My brother said, "We didn't know." I looked him in the eye and said, "You never asked." We were standing near a tray of fruit tarts, sweating under a chandelier. Someone had adjusted the air conditioning too cold for a spring afternoon in DC, too quiet after everything. Ethan had that look again. The one he wore when he knew he was supposed to say something meaningful but couldn't quite find the words. His hands were shoved into his suit pockets. The cuff of his shirt was slightly damp. He'd spilled something and hoped no one noticed. "You were incredible up there," he offered. I sipped the lukewarm coffee. Didn't smile, didn't blink. Still am. He cleared his throat, shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "I mean, we're proud. We just didn't know." I finished for him. He nodded, almost with relief. As if he thought the sentence somehow covered it all. "You never asked," I said. His mouth opened, then closed again. His fiancée Charlotte had more sincerity in a single compliment back at Thanksgiving than he had now with a room full of people watching. My mother approached next. She had a small plate in her hand, half a pastry untouched. Her nails were freshly done. Nude polish, subtle sparkle. Her eyes looked at my uniform like she was seeing it for the first time. "We were worried sick, you know," she said softly. Polite. Practiced. "Were you?" I said, still watching the coffee swirl in my cup. "You were silent." She flinched, just slightly. Then added, "Well, you didn't always make it easy to reach you." "No, I didn't," I said. I let the pause hang. "And you didn't try." My father stood nearby, hands behind his back like he was waiting to be summoned for inspection. The man who once said, "You'll grow out of it," when I told him I was enlisting. Now he stepped forward, cleared his throat with ceremony. "You've earned respect. From everyone here." I turned to him. "Not from you," I said, "from everyone else." That stopped the conversation. Not abruptly, but completely. Silence is different when it's earned. It has weight, like armor. Major Davis appeared beside me then, as if he'd sensed it. "She didn't earn it here today," he said evenly. "She earned it the moment she didn't break." I nodded, still not smiling. Across the room, a photographer asked the president for one last shot. People moved around us like nothing had cracked. But I felt it. The shift, the end of trying. I stepped away mid-sentence. No drama, no grand exit, just done. They weren't my audience anymore. They were just spectators. As I walked past the glass doors that led out toward the courtyard, someone brushed gently past me, the president again, heading the opposite direction. He didn't stop, just said as we crossed, "They'll never forget this, but you already knew what you were." I did. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I needed to prove it. My grandfather's medals were wrapped in old newspaper. Not displayed. Not touched. The attic smelled like cardboard and forgotten years. Thin beams of dust slid through a cracked window, settling on boxes labeled in my father's neat straight pen. Tax files, 1987, Harvard Archives. Summer tools. And one in the corner, no label at all. Just a shoebox wedged between two stacks of manuals from a copier they probably no longer owned. I pulled it out carefully. It wasn't heavy, but it had the kind of weight that doesn't come from ounces. Inside, a folded army green uniform. Fabric soft from time. Edges frayed. Buttons dulled. Beneath it, a small rusted pin. Bronze. Barely recognizable. And letters yellowed at the fold. One sealed. The others loose, written in careful script. One began. I didn't come home whole. I came home silent. I didn't realize my father had followed me up there until I heard the creak of the last step. He didn't say anything right away. Just stood near the doorway, hands in his pockets like always. When I looked over, his eyes were fixed on the box in my lap. He didn't talk about it, I said. No, he replied. He didn't talk because no one asked. There it was again. That same sentence. That same sin. Same as you, he added. I looked down at the letter again. The paper trembled slightly in my hands, not from emotion, but from something older. Colder. You could have broken that pattern, I said. You chose not to. He sat down slowly, leaning against the old dresser. I was scared, he said. Simple. Flat. No defense. Of what it did to him. Of what it would do to you. There was silence again. Not cruel. Just final. I didn't answer. I folded the letter and kept it. I didn't take the uniform. Didn't touch the sealed one. Didn't straighten the metal pin. I took one thing, the round metal disc engraved faintly with his initials. WM, same as mine. That night I placed it in the top drawer of my nightstand. Not to display, not to prove anything. Just to remember what silence can carry and what it can bury. She looked like me 10 years ago. Same ponytail. Same silence when called on. Same way her shoulders tightened every time someone used her name, like it was a question she had to earn the right to answer. The classroom smelled like floor polish and old field manuals. The kind of scent that never really left army buildings, no matter how many coats of paint they applied. Sunlight spilled in from the west windows, cutting long gold lines across the linoleum. The cadets sat straight, not because of me, but because that's what they were trained to do. I didn't stand at a podium. I never liked the height of one. I paced. Chalk in one hand, clicker in the other. Slide behind me, wound patterns from field trauma. Penetration versus blast radius. The kind of stuff no one wanted to admit they might need, but this was the job. This was where I rebuilt. Now remember, I said you don't treat the blood first, you treat the breath. Someone nodded. Someone else took notes like it would save them personally. I didn't call names, didn't demand eye contact. But I noticed her, the quiet one in row 3. Not slouching, but not leaning forward either. Just there. Like I used to be. Questions I asked. Nothing. A cough. A shuffle of boots. Then a hand. Hers. Did you ever freeze up? She asked. The room stilled. Not out of judgment, but out of a kind of held breath. I looked right at her. Held the silence, then let it go with a small smile. Only once, I said. When I saw my parents clap. A beat. Then the cadets laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it wasn't. And they knew it. The bell didn't ring. Not in this building. Just the end of the slide deck and the shuffling of boots as chairs scraped back. Most cadets left quickly. Chatter low, respectful. A few nodded my way. One saluted even though I wasn't in uniform. Old habits. I gathered my notes slowly, pretending to be occupied. I didn't want to rush the moment because I saw her still there. Row 3. The girl who asked. She stood but didn't leave. Her hands were clasped behind her back like she was waiting to be dismissed from something deeper than a classroom. You stayed, I said softly. She nodded, eyes unsure whether she was allowed to speak first. I just. Her voice trailed off, then found itself again. I joined after your story went viral. The ceremony. The clip where you didn't smile. I blinked, not because it hurt. Just because it was true. She kept going. I watched it over and over. Everyone else cried about the president. I watched your hands. I didn't say anything. She was still speaking. They didn't move, not once. Not when he said your name. Not even when your mom stepped back. A pause. Then quieter. I guess I just wanted to matter like that. Even if nobody clapped. The way she said it, not desperate, not proud, just honest. Like handing over a wound already scabbed. I walked to the desk, opened the drawer slowly. My grandfather's medal sat in a small cloth pouch next to mine. I didn't touch them. Not yet. Instead, I turned to her. You already do, I said. They just don't know it yet. She didn't speak again. Just nodded as if something settled inside her that didn't need explaining. Then she left, no salute, no thanks. Only that same careful gait I remembered in myself. I stood still for a moment after the door closed. The classroom was warm now, sun creeping lower, turning the wall a dull amber. I walked back to the desk. Opened the drawer again, 2 medals, same dull metal, same size almost. One rusted at the edge. One polished because it had to be. I took them out, set them down next to each other like they'd been waiting for this. One was my grandfather's from a war he never spoke about. The other was mine from a war I never got to stop reliving. I stared at them. Not for what they meant. Not for what they cost. But for what they proved. That we both survived something no one at our table ever asked about. I didn't need to forgive them, not anymore. I'd outgrown the needing. They had no idea what it meant to come home with something still bleeding beneath your skin long after the bandages came off. And I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life waiting for them to look up. The building had quieted. No more boots, no more buzz. Only the soft click of the wall clock above the exit. I stayed seated a while longer. Let the room return to stillness. I reached for my phone, not expecting anything. Old habit, maybe boredom. But there it was. A new message. Torres. They assigned me your old bunk. Tough act to follow. I read it twice, and for the first time all day I let myself smile. Not a full one. Not the kind for cameras. Just enough to feel it crease the corner of my mouth. I typed slowly. No edits. You'll do fine, they'll learn to see you too. I hit send and stared at the screen for a while, half expecting more. But there didn't need to be more. Not this time. I turned off the phone. Placed it face down. Then reached forward, folded both medals into the same cloth pouch. No labels, no speeches. Just metal and memory and weight. I slipped them into the drawer, closed it gently. The chair squeaked when I stood. The kind of sound no one remembers except the one who sat in it too long. The hallway was quiet when I stepped out. Late sun stretched across the tiles in long golden shapes, dust dancing in the stillness like it had nowhere else to be. My boots didn't echo. Not in this building. They absorbed sound here and gave it back as memory. As I walked, I passed a framed photo from 5 classes ago. Young faces. Straight backs. Eyes that hadn't yet seen what they would carry home. I paused just a second. Not because I was in the photo, I wasn't. But maybe one day someone like Julia would be. And she'd stand straighter because someone once told her she already mattered. I kept walking. No one waited at the end of the hall. No hand on my shoulder. No voice calling my name. And I didn't need one. Not anymore. I stepped outside, felt the breeze lift my collar. The air smelled like pine and concrete warming in spring sun. Somewhere behind me a classroom door clicked shut. Someone else would teach tomorrow. I'd be here. Not to be seen. But to help someone else believe they were never invisible to begin with.